Welcome to my budget deck channel, where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible, so if you're into this, why not subscribe? Today I had a look at something that was kind of requested by a subscriber, but I took it and made it my own kind of weird mishmash of archetypes, and I have to say, this is first of all meant to be kind of for the Fusion Festival, not necessarily a grind it and win all games kind of deck, but it's definitely fun and you will win certain games with it, and it's actually not too bad of a deck. You can play it in the ranked ladder. You will probably be able to get up to platinum. I basically went onto the ladder and had like 5-6 wins straight in a row, so it's not too bad. It's obviously not a meta contender in any sort or form, which you can see by no hand traps and whatnot. It's still a competent deck, and I still wanted to showcase it. And let's start off with the Despia part of the deck. One comedian, I just like having different names of Despia cards in the deck. You could switch this card out if you want to have it less budgety, or you already have the Despia cards anyway. Play one Dramaturge. This card is genuinely just quite a lot better than this one, but this has specific uses where it actually comes in handy. Sadly, it doesn't protect your fusion monsters, but just Despia cards, which can be nice for the field spell and stuff, but other way around, it would have been more helpful in this specific deck. I just decided to run double Despia and Shaddoll. You don't need its effect that many times, but being able to reset stuff from the graveyard is fun, and also the whole discard stuff, which I'll be talking about in a second, is also actually quite neat in this deck. So I definitely would run this at 2 for the searches and whatnots. Could bump it up to 3 if you like. Shaddoll Falco, just part of the Shaddoll package. Could run any other Shaddoll, but I like running at least one Falco. One Hedgehog, just for the count, could bump it up to 2, but I didn't feel like it was needed. One Wendy for the budget option, and also because it's very good in setting up certain plays, especially in conjunction with Construct, because you can get draw 2, you can get disruption during your opponent's turn and whatnots in combination with stuff like Incarnation and Schemata, so that is always helpful as well. Triple Schemata, because this card can send any other Shaddoll card to the graveyard, which triggers about all of their effects, so this is quite neat, and we're definitely running it over any other Shaddoll because it basically is any other Shaddoll, but deck thinning as well. One Dragon to pop spell traps, because this deck is okay against spell traps, not amazing. It has one other card that's kind of good against it. Other than that, doesn't do much against spell traps, so this is important. Aerial, because you can actually go into the water fusion, which isn't always terrible. Plus, if you want to play a more budget variant, you run out of Shaddoll fusions quite quickly, so the water one is actually quite nice in the deck. Plus the graveyard effect is, well, getting rid of stuff in your opponent's graveyard is quite nice. Also, you could technically link Climb with some kind of combos that you can do with it and Shaddoll Incarnation, but we're not going to talk about this because this is a fusion deck. I run a triple dual avatar Fists Yugioh, because this is the card that searches your spell cards, and the spell cards are very, very important, so this card at 3 should be fine. I would say you have a bit of a problem sometimes with it, because you can only pop itself and then you don't have anything on board, and you kind of need to use like an effect monster and whatnot. It's iffy sometimes, but if you search with field spell, that circumvents the problem a little bit. Other than that, the card is still absolutely fine. Why I only run 2 dual avatar feat Kokoku is the reason, well, your trap cards don't really do all that much. They're nice, and don't get me wrong, especially I think the new one is extremely powerful if played right, but it's a bit iffy in this deck because I decided to play the fusion that actually needs this card instead of the other one, because the other one I felt like didn't really do much for the deck. It's easier to go into, but for using an ultra rare ticket, I felt like I didn't want to use the other level 8 one. This one is, in my opinion, the slightly weaker one, because it kind of only works if you already have a board established, or if your opponent is already out of negates and whatnots, and they usually won't be. If you have this card, obviously run it instead of one of the Despia cards, or instead of Shaddoll Wendigo, but if you don't have it, I felt like going for this one was a bit better. You'd think you'd run this card at 3 then, but since this can search the spell cards, which are the ones that fusion summon, it feels iffy, and you will be able to use this card eventually because you can send it to the graveyard actually, by fusion summoning for Construct, which is quite nice, and then you can special summon it back out, and you can use all kinds of different things to get to these cards. Search it with the field spell, search it with reinforcement. So I felt like at 2 it was fine because I wanted to keep the deck at 40 cards. If you want to swap one card out and play this card at 3, you can get rid of Screams of the Branded. It's not amazing, but it does its part in this deck. So I felt 2 was fine, but you could bump it up to 3 if you like. Alibur is a great card. I run it at 1 because of budget reasons, also because you can summon it out of the deck with a branded opening. Problematic is if you start with opening and Alibur, because then you lose a lot of your searching power that otherwise you would have, since you don't have that many branded cards that you can, or Despia cards that you can summon / search. One Shaddoll Beast for the draws, and it's kind of your draw engine with this Construct, for example, because you can send stuff to the graveyard like Wendy and Squamata, which then sends Incarnation, so you can actually draw 2 cards off of that already, which is quite nice. 1 Ad Libitum of Despia, because this card can get you your fusions back, which is quite neat, and it's another Despia name that is cheap, so I would definitely run it at 1. This card only searches your dual avatars, which is quite helpful in most occasions because it can get your combo started, and possibly will eat an Ash Blossom from your opponent if they don't really pay attention or are not that good. Shaddoll Fusion, good card going second, okay card going first. For the event that you only draw this card without any Shaddoll, it's a bit annoying because you can only fuse Shaddoll monsters, but discarding it with your many discards effect to the graveyard isn't too terrible as well, because you can still recycle it if you go into your Shaddoll monsters later. Dual Avatar Invitation, very good card. It triggers your Shaddoll monsters and your Despia Tragedy from hand, so this card is very good because it doesn't discard for a cost. And also it fusion summons and fills your board with tokens that, yes, expire in the end phase, but it gets all your fusions out, so it is a play starter that doesn't need a normal summon most of the time, unless if you draw at least if you draw it, so it's a very neat card. Perfect Sync, field spell that searches your dual avatar main deck monsters, which is nice, and also produces a token basically each turn if you have another monster, dual avatar effect monster on board, so that can be nice. Plus note the token, this token stays, so you can wall up, you can use it for different kind of shenanigans, you could use it for your defeating evil, you could do all kinds of shenanigans with this token, so it is quite nice. 1 Despia Theater, because this card at 1 is fine, you can search it out in so many different ways. You can reset it as well with Tragedy, so I felt like at 1 this card was definitely fine. Dual Avatar Defeating Evil, great card in this deck, since it's searchable, not overly because you want to mainly search other kind of spell cards in this deck, but if you draw it, or if you can search it because you already have all of the other combo pieces, this card is quite a good disruption tool. Don't have to run it because, like I said, there's enough spell cards, so if you want to play triple Kokoku, that is also fine. Triple Branded Opening, very good card, protects fusion monsters, not just Despia monsters, and it can discard without cost, which is good with the Shaddolls, which is good with Tragedy again, and get certain cards into the graveyard. Paleozoics aren't too bad in the graveyard, at least, even though you don't run that many traps. Incarnation isn't bad in the graveyard. Ascendance is actually not bad in the graveyard, so there's loads of stuff you can do with this card in specific. Paleozoic Dynamiscus, very good card because it's the same kind of thing. It disrupts your opponent, and it also discards not for cost, so it triggers a lot of effects in your deck, so it can be helpful if your opponent shuts down your actual plays a bit, and you just set this card and at least keep them off of finishing you, and then next turn you can keep playing at least. Plus this card could come up sometimes with fusion summoning it with a Despia Theater, because you could go into El Shaddoll, the water version, since the Paleozoic is a water monster and this one is a fusion monster that is level 8 or higher, so you can actually fusion summon it with this on board, so this is quite funny. Shaddoll Incarnation can do a lot of things, a bit annoying if you draw it, but sending it to the graveyard off of effects is quite nice. Dual Avatar Return, nice if you have the Dual Avatar package going. Obviously it's a dead card in hand if you have nothing like this going on, so not, I feel like I wanted to run 2 targets, and I felt like it was better than the card that copies your spell traps, which up to your personal preference, but I like being able to, in the grind game, getting stuff back from the graveyard. Dual Avatar Ascendance, actually a very good card, also only if you have your Dual Avatar engine going, which is a bit problematic since you do only run 2 of Kokoku. But if you search it with the card, then this card is actually quite nice. You can search summon cards from your extra deck or from your deck. The thing is, again, because that's the designer on Duel Avatar, that they kind of have to work in conjunction together to function, because if you search it with Kokoko and you pop Kokoko, you can't go into your extra deck monster because you can only summon level 2 or level 4 monsters. So you have to pop Yuhi to actually summon a monster from your extra deck, and so on and so on. I actually quite like the design of that, but it can be annoying playing because you don't instantly plus off of stuff, you slowly grind, and summoning Yuhi during your opponent's turn isn't actually that great. But the second effect of this card is also nice, adding one card from your graveyard back to your hand, like one Duel Avatar monster, which is also good in the grind game. And Screams of the Branded, a card that helps because you do run a lot of level 8 or higher, well, a lot of fusion monsters in general, because this card doesn't really care about the level 8 or higher. So it's quite neat because you can technically get your Winda and stuff back if your opponent gets rid of it. So it has its uses, but it's not broken in this deck. You could also run stuff like Branded and High Spirits, works a bit in conjunction with Construct, but I probably wouldn't recommend running that instead. El Shaddoll Winda, great card, stops your opponent from playing. You do run quite a few dark monsters, so it is fairly easy to get out even turn 1. Sadly, not with the Duel Avatar kind of engine, so they're all light monsters, so this is a bit annoying. But Construct is as good, actually, in my opinion, because it can get a lot of stuff going, and the effect of the cards in the graveyard are quite strong as well. Duel Avatar, since your extra deck isn't too cramped, you run 3 of all, keeps you going. You can go into multiple different things then over and over and over again, which is good. Don't have to run Wendigo, but sometimes you run out of stuff. This card's terrible, but it could technically stall you in a very grindy grind game. And if you run out of all of your Shaddoll cards so far, then this is at least a fusion you might have left in your deck. But at this point, you probably have sent Wendy to the graveyard already, so this card effectively does nothing. I decided to go for the level 7 one. It's a bit iffy because this deck kind of builds around level 8 or higher fusion monsters. So this one cannot be fusion summoned with Theater, which is not much of a problem. But there's other cards where this would be a bit more handy than not if it was level 8, because you could summon it back with certain cards then, and stuff would happen. But it is not. So if you'd like to go for the level 8 one, that is also fine. It's probably way easier to go into as well, but this card I felt like was a bit better because giving stuff back, spell traps to your opponent's hand, is quite nice. And when you control 2 fusion monsters, you can actually destroy a monster if the effect activates, which is a lot better than what the other card does. Construct is a card that you definitely need in this deck. It's very strong. Don't really have to say much to Construct. It's been around for that long. Despia card, you could either go for this one or you could go for the Blazing Dragon. I prefer this one because it has a different kind of recursion, and the whole getting stuff to 0 helps you against things like Chaos Max Dragon, for example. So in general, it's not too bad. You decide which one of the 2 you want to run, whenever you have is fine. 1 Water Shaddoll, because this card is in general okay, actually, and like I said, you have a few Shaddolls in your extra deck, since you're playing the budget variant. Obviously stuff like Apkalon is probably a lot better. Even if you want to run a second Construct or a second Winda, it would probably be better than this card. 1 weird card that you can go into, because it's 2 level 5 or higher warrior monsters, which your fusion Duel Avatars are, is Idatan the Conqueror Star. It does nothing for your deck, absolutely nothing, besides having a strong attack point fusion monster on your board, because you can't search a level 5 warrior monster from your deck to your hand because you don't have one. But it actually, the second effect, you can discard stuff, bump its attack, whatever, but you can fusion summon it with Despia Theater, which is quite nice from time to time. And the last Despia fusion is this one. It's doable, and especially in the fusion event, you hopefully your opponent will be playing extra deck cards. Sometimes they play stall or stuff like this, or any other floodgatey kind of deck, but technically they could be playing fusion monsters, so getting fusions back from your opponent's graveyard can be quite neat, especially in the grind game. So I felt like this card was worth running. Obviously, fusion deployment gets a massive mention because this card would be nice to run in a deck like this, since it can search out your Duel Avatar monsters, but it's triple ultra rare, even though I know it's in the structure deck, so technically it's not that hard to get. Triple of it would be an investment of 1,500 gems and some nice Cyberdog cards, but I decided to not include it because this would not be worth it in my kind of opinion for it right now. But if you like to run it, then obviously this card is very essential, especially to like a purer version of Duel Avatar. Other than that, rank 8s work well in this deck eventually over the grind game if you can keep certain level 8 monsters on board, because you have a lot of cards that restrict you to fusion summoning. So yeah, you don't want to cram your extra deck with it, but technically it would work. If you want to run the Fall of Albas packages, some branded stuff in there, do it, go for it. It's always quite fun. Starving Venom is technically a good card. Don't have to run it because it's a super rare and I didn't want to include it, but could include it if you have it. Hope you like the deck profile so far. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, hope you have a good day.